Hello, 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 hello. This is Willie Cartwright from Save the Sane. Glad to have you here with me today for another episode of From Save to Sane with Willie Cartwright. It looks like today I might be solo. I'm not sure. Taisha can join us today. As I always tell you guys, she has a lot going on. But as always, I am so appreciative of her and everything that she's done and what she continues to do. So if you're out there, Taisha, I hope you're doing well. Take care of the baby. And if you can join us, you can join us. I will appreciate it. If not, you may be able to join us in the comments. But anyway, we're going to get it going. And before I start, I've already said thank you to Taisha. And I have to, as I always do, say thank you to my better half, my wife, Salima. Shouts out to Salima. My wife, she is everything to me, for me. She does everything. She works in the background, helping me with a lot of stuff. So I am appreciative of her. So that's what we always do to get things started. Today, I wanted to talk about what did Jesus really sacrifice, or what did Jesus really sacrifice? I want to talk about the whole sacrifice thing of Jesus. And before I get into details with that, I just want to make sure that if you're on, send me a message in the comments to say hello or good evening. So it is 6 o'clock. This is not our usual time, but we've had to change the time because of some things that are going on. So we, as I told you before a few weeks ago, or maybe the last time that we were on, we're going to go to every other Thursday, and we're going to do 6 o'clock. So that's where we are now, 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So hopefully those of you who are always on can continue to follow us. We definitely appreciate that. I see you, Neo. Thank you for joining, Neo. Uh, yeah, Neo, I'm going to mention you a little bit later, but thank you so much for joining. We appreciate that. So hopefully all is well with you. So again, what I wanted to talk about today was sacrifice, or Jesus' sacrifice. And so we're going to look at this from a couple of different angles. We're going to go on the assumption that Jesus, the biblical Jesus, existed. And then everything that took place around his crucifixion happened. We're just going on that premise. We're not going to argue that premise today. We're just going to take it on that premise so I can make the point about his sacrifice. And so let me tell you why I wanted to do this subject this evening. One of the things that we know about African Americans in this country is that we are extremely, extremely devout. We are probably the most devout demographic in this country when it comes to Christianity, and in particular following Jesus. And there are reasons for that. And I may have mentioned this several times on different shows, but there are books out there that talk about us. When I say our, I'm talking about African Americans, our relationship or our devoutness to Christianity and Jesus, and the reason for it. There's a book by Dr. Cone, I think a couple of books by Dr. Cone, but one in particular talks about the title. I think it's the cross and the lynching tree, and I might have it reversed. It might be a lynching tree and the cross, but the cross and the lynching tree. And in that book, he talks about African Americans' devoutness to Jesus, and the reason why is because we see his struggle and our struggle parallel, right? We feel the pain and the suffering that Jesus went through, and we relate that to our own pain and suffering as a collective group. And so we feel a special bond and connection to Jesus because of this suffering that he supposedly went through. And when we talk about suffering, we also talking about, because through his suffering is where the sacrifice comes in. So this is a connection between the two. We're talking about his sacrifice, and we're talking about the suffering. And so that's one of the books. And then there's a whole genre related to this topic. Liberation theology is the genre that's related to this topic, that talks about our connection to Jesus, or why we feel like we have a connection to Jesus and his suffering and the sacrifice that he made. So this is so I wanted to talk about this, but another reason why I wanted to address this was because I often talk to believers. And I asked them, why does it seem that we as collective people put more of an emphasis on the so-called suffering or the sacrifice that Jesus made, but we don't have that same emphasis or that same reverence toward the sacrifices that our ancestors made? And then we get into, I get into explaining to them the enormous amount of sacrifice that our ancestors did over an enormous period of time. In my opinion, and objectively, that sacrifice was a lot more than what this Jesus character sacrificed, and the pain and the suffering that our ancestors went through over multiple generations, and as individuals through their lifetime, right? It is definitely more significant than what this Jesus character went through. And our ancestors were not gods, so they didn't have the knowledge of knowing how long the sacrifice was going to last, or how long the suffering was going to last, or even to a certain extent the ability to end the suffering or the sacrifice. So I wanted to address it from both of those angles. But let me tell you why this kind of came up. Um, uh, and I'm trying to get my thoughts together as to which story I want to tell you guys first. Um, I, Many of you know I am in school, uh, getting a master's in religious studies. So interesting, very interesting. So we're learning about everything. But there's a colleague in my class, and he's from Nigeria. I mean, he literally just came over here. He got here a few days ago. This is his first time in the States. And one of the classes that we're in, uh, there's a book that we're reading, and in the book highlights what happened to the Native Americans. And I don't call them Indians. I call them Native Americans because we know the history of Columbus, and in his ignorance, he named them the native people here Indians. So I don't call them Indians. I was taught by a fourth grade teacher that they should be referred to as Native Americans, and that's how I've always referred to them. So if you hear me say Native Americans, then I'm talking about what most people will call Indians, but I call them Native Americans. But anyway, so in the book, the author talks about the Native Americans and the things that were done to them, especially one particular tribe. How the land was taken, and how they was made to move to reservations, and they were stripped of their culture and their spirituality and the way that they lived off the land, and just all of that. Most of you guys know the story. We learn about what happened between the so-called settlers and the Native Americans. But in this particular book, what she highlights are the things that missionaries did. In this case, it would be the Catholic and the Protestant missionaries, because they were behind pushing the Native Americans to settle on reservations, because in their warped thinking, they thought that this would be more humane of a treatment, as opposed to not coming to another country and taking land that don't belong to you, right? uh, uh, or not pushing people off of the land that they uh, had dwelled on for so many decades, right, and centuries, right. But yeah, so they thought that this would be more humane if they moved them to reservations. And so the book kind of talks about the spiritual practices of the Native Americans and the moral issues or the dilemmas that the so-called missionaries, by the way, in the book, the missionaries are called quote unquote friends of the Indians. So that's kind of ironic, right? But anyway, during our discussion, this colleague of mine from Africa, and how you doing, Papa Soul Searcher? Glad you joined us. Appreciate it. Um, but this colleague of mine, in an open discussion, he makes a point that what the missionaries, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, he said what the missionaries were doing was in the best interest of the Native Americans, because they uh, they were involved in what he would call less than moral practices, like human sacrifice and some other things. And we can argue that as well. But this is his statements. So basically, what he's saying is that what the white settlers did to the Native Americans in some capacity is justified because they being the missionaries were attempting to civilize the Native Americans because of some of the practices that they had. And so the reason why this is relatable, or this is relevant to what we're talking about today, is because what I got from that is this individual saying that making excuses for the behavior of the settlers, but doing it under the auspices of or in his mind thinking that because these are Christians, it must be right because it's Christianity. Again, that so if we connect the dots, some of us, and I've said that some of us have a conscious, and many of us have a unconscious reverence toward what is European or white, including our brothers and sisters from the motherland in Africa. And this has been my experience with, I'm not saying all Africans, but many Africans that I've run into and have discussions. And over my many years, I've had relationships with many Africans. And this is kind of what I get from many of them. Not all, but a lot of them. So there's this incredible reverence for whiteness. And if you connect the dots, it stems from this Jesus character being portrayed as white, and then the suffering and the things that this character supposedly went through for our salvation to save us. So when my colleague in school said these things, my immediate response to him was, first of all, European settlers at that point and any point before and every moment after, they have zero moral grounds to stand on. And I told, and so here's the other thing. He could, hey, Taisha, glad to have you. Watch it be ready for that. Thank you so much for joining us. But also, he paralleled that conversation into what happened in Africa during the transatlantic slave trade. And you can imagine that the professor had to do everything he could to keep me from saying something at that moment. I got opportunity to say something later. I got opportunity to respond later. But he said that, and this is almost quoting him, but he said something to the effect of, when I have these discussions with people who are talking about the transatlantic slave trade, he said, I remind them all the time that what the Europeans did to us was not totally wrong or bad, because we were involved in some immoral practices, to include human sacrifices, right? And so later on, I said to him, I said, okay, I said, first of all, Africa is not the only place where human sacrifices took place. I said, but secondly, and more importantly, Europeans have no moral grounds to stand on when they're trying to correct another ethnicity or another nationality about behavior. Zero ground. And that goes for those involved in this transatlantic slave trade, and that goes for those same individuals or the same people involved in what happened to the Native Americans in this country. So again, all of that stuff happening, it made me think about, okay, maybe we need to have a discussion about this sacrifice that Jesus made, because indirectly it creates, or have created within us, the community, this reverence for a white Jesus, which also has created, and many of us won't admit it, but there is an unconscious, and even in some of us, a conscious reverence for white people. If you don't believe me, see Herschel Walker and recent comments that he made, and some other people that we know of that are famous. But Herschel Walker immediately came to mind with some recent comments that he made. You can Google it and see the comments that he made. But he's not the only person by far. So secondly, what kind of prompted this conversation was that I had the immense privilege of being on Neo X's show Sunday. And it was an awesome show. And again, Neo X is awesome. I tell y'all to support this sister. Please, please, please. Just like I tell you to support Taisha. But I was fortunate enough to be on the show Sunday, and we got into a discussion. And to be honest, I can't even remember. I'm trying to remember all the details of the discussion about it. But one thing that stuck out was that we had a gentleman that called, and he sounded like, and I didn't know, I didn't see his face, but he sounded like an older black gentleman. And Neo is on, so she can type in, or she can type in if I'm getting this wrong. But he said something, or he alluded something to the effect that um, we being African Americans over here are somewhat fortunate that slavery happened because it kind of helped us or fixed us, or that we would be worse off if we were still in Africa, something to that effect. And Neil, you can let me know if that's kind of what he said. Um, and again, I can kind of during his comments, I was hot, but I refrained and I said what I said to him. I believe in a very civil manner. But here's what I understand about people like him. I've literally heard other African Americans say that slavery was not an altogether bad thing because it did one, it exposed us to Jesus Christ, which they believe is the greatest thing to ever happen to us. Secondly, it took us out of Africa where we were savages and uncivilized, which is a complete myth. Apparently, these people don't know the history of Africa, the continent, or they're believing the propaganda that the countries like the United States put forth, right? Um, and so when I hear those type of conversations, the first reaction is anger, and then the second reaction is pity, because I know these people are basically ignorant, not in the sense that they're not intelligent, but they're ignorant to this particular subject, and their point of reference comes from stories and propaganda and other things that Europeans, and particularly this country, put forth regarding Africa and the history of our people coming from Africa, right? So again, I felt that it was highly appropriate that we have this conversation today about what did Jesus really, really sacrifice and what does it really mean. So when we talk about Jesus, the character in the Bible, we get a glimpse of his life the first 12 years, and nothing, particularly bad about his first 12 years. He's not suffering. He's not living in the projects. He's not in the hood, none of that kind of stuff. But so it seems like there's really nothing going on there. And then we go, 18 years without anything about Jesus whatsoever, until he gets to about 30. I'm reading coming from Neo. He also said our history culture started. Oh yeah, he said, yeah. I don't know how I missed that, because that was the most. That was more asinine than anything else he said. For those of you who don't see the comments or listening, uh, he also said that our history culture started in the antebellum South, which I think the reason why Leo, I think the reason why I forgot that is because that is so asinine to me. I think I may have tuned out at that point, because for any black person to say that and really believe that, either tells me one or two things: either you are completely ignorant, or you're from a generation or two before my generation, where this is really all that you were taught. And if that's the case, then I would cut him just a tad bit of slack. But that's the danger of us as a people not knowing our history. Because I'm telling you, every other person that's not African American, and I have a wide swath of friends. My circle of friends is extremely diverse. And if I have a conversation with any of them that are non-African American, they can tell me where their parents or great grandparents or ancestors are from, what country, what town. They can tell you the history. They bring over their culture, whether it be Hispanics, whether it be Europeans. And so we don't have that. It's out there. I mean, we're in the age of information, so we all should be able to research this information and find out this stuff about ourselves. You sound very ignorant when you make a statement like the gentleman made on Neo X's show. You sound completely ignorant. Um, Amanda said, yes, I caught you. Thank you so much. I'm glad you was there. Neil said, right. It was like, what? It was like, what? Like, are you serious? Um, I'm sorry I read that because I kind of lost my train of thought on that. But what I was saying was, we talk about the sacrifice. So when Jesus gets to 30, according to the Bible, this is when we kind of catch back up to him. But we still don't learn anything about the 18 years that he's not there. I mean, there's some stuff that historians talk about that may or may have happened. But regarding the Bible, there's not a whole lot that we get for those 18 years. So he's 30 years old, and then here comes the whole crucifixion. I mean, he's crucified at 33, I think is when he died. But let's examine the him being crucified. What actually happened? As we hear or as we know about with the Bible, this was a 3-day ordeal supposedly. And then when we do the hours, it's really not 3 full days, but let's just ignore that part. So this is supposedly a 3-day ordeal. So here's the story. Here's the thing for me. This is a character who is originally a god, part of a godhead if you believe in the Trinity. So he's a god. So theoretically, he knows that these things are going to happen to him, right? So he comes down, and as a god, he endures being crucified. Here's what many people don't know: crucifixion was the preferred way of putting people to death during that time. So what happened to Jesus was not original. They did this to all criminals. They crucified them during these times. So if you watch stories like or movies like The Passion of the Christ, I mean they just blow it out. I mean they just they blood is everywhere. He's carrying his cross. I mean they go overboard. They being evangelicals or Christians, whoever responsible for making movies like that, they go completely overboard. And so he's crucified. He's on the cross for a period of time, and then he passes on, and he ascends back to. He's buried supposedly, and then he comes out, gets out, and he ascends back to heaven. I've seen African Americans who watch the Passion of the Christ, those stories, and I've literally seen them cry, bawl their eyes out. I mean, just literally uncontrollable crying. I've seen people who think about Easter because Easter obviously is the I won't say celebration, but it's about the crucifixion, right? I've seen people who think about Easter and talk about Easter who get extremely emotional. I'm talking about us, Black people, get extremely emotional about what supposedly happened to a man in the Middle East 2,000 plus years ago. They don't have that same emotion for what happened to their parents or great great grandparents 2 or 3 generations ago. The things that they endured in this country through slavery, the years and years and years of physical, mental, sexual abuse that our ancestors endured, that we have a track record of, that we can literally trace, that we can read about, that we can see pictures of, that we can hear it almost firsthand. We can get a second or third hand when they're telling the stories of the things that happened to our ancestors only a few generations ago. And you mention this to a lot of Black people, and there is zero emotion, zero emotion. So I'm always saying, where's the emotion for something that was clearly more heinous than what happened to Jesus Christ, that happened to people that you have a direct DNA connection to, that you are directly biologically related to, and happened more recently than what happened to your Savior Jesus. And so we have to talk about what is it within us that will make us numb to the things that happened to our ancestors, but make us completely emotional and lose it all when we think about what supposedly happened to this Jesus character over a 2.5-day period of time. And so that's where I'm coming from when we talk about the sacrifice, and did Jesus really sacrifice? And what did he sacrifice? So if you hello, Bright Blue Haze, I appreciate you joining. Um, Anybody else who joined, glad to have you. If you have a comment, please make the comment, and we can talk about it as well while we're going through this. Amanda NBS, she said, I was the only person in my family who did not cry watching the Passion of the Christ. I thought something was wrong with me. No, it's oh wow, it's there's a lot to unpack here about this. And one of the things that I've started to say recently, and I'm kind of late to the party, is that I've said this to my wife too. I think that all of us growing up in this country, African Americans, I think as soon as we reach 21, we all need some kind of mental evaluation, and maybe we need to get some mental help for a variety of things. But when I mentioned to my wife, I was thinking about the stress that we endure growing up, being black in this country. But I think also we need to add, we need to get some kind of counseling regarding our upbringing if we were brought up in the evangelical Christian church, whatever the denomination you may be, Baptist or Jehovah's Witness or whatever it is. Those of us who have broken away or who started to question our belief system, I think it would behoove us to get some kind of psychological treatment, some kind of mental treatment, because a lot of us don't realize the amount of trauma that we went through within this religion. And so, Amanda, you are actually normal. Those individuals that make a huge deal out of this and cry and get emotional about this, they need to really get some help. Really, so no, you are not you. Nothing is wrong with you, right? But it just shows you the level of mental illness and I'm using mental illness lightly, right? But I'm using it for the impact because I wanted to make a point. I wanted to sit in your brains. So the amount of mental illness that some of us have in relationship to our faith or religion, those of us who are still part of it, those of us who are coming out of it, those of us who have successfully come out of it. But these are things that we really, really need to be thinking about and talking about. Why is that? I mean, why did everybody in your family, Amanda, react like that? And I know a lot of other people that did the same thing. So absolutely. Bright Blue Hay said, do you think it's a good idea to seek counseling from someone of another race? Um, Here's my thing about that. And I am not a counselor. I am not a psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever. Uh, Not at all. Here's what I would be looking at within that within our within the situation of us and religion. Race is embedded. What has historically happened to us in this country, uniquely African American, um, and the use of religion to continue that or to enhance that, and it served as a tool for that. For me, I would want to see someone who could not only relate to the religious part of it, um, but I would also want to see someone who could relate to the racial element of it. Also, I think in counseling, with this type of counseling, obviously you would want to use someone who is not a religious counselor or come from a religious background in their counseling. More of a secular counselor, but someone who may have had a history in religion or have extensively studied religion and understand what those of us who've been in the faith is going through or maybe still going through, and also someone who can relate with the racial the racial aspect of it as well, because I think it's connected for us. For us, again, what makes it unique to us is that there's a connection between race and the religion, and they go hand in hand, right? That's not unique to anyone else but us. Um, and so that's probably another reason why it is so powerful. And at the top of this, I talked about the books and the liberation of theology. Those of you who are not familiar with liberation theology, it may be something that you want to research and look up and take some time to read about, because it explains a lot, especially for somebody like me who came from older, more traditional churches where it was doom and gloom and it was like misery. And it was, every day they would tell you, you might not see tomorrow. You might not make it home today. And that was just part of the rhetoric that I heard every Sunday. So liberation theology and books like um, uh, the the cross and the lynching tree, as well as God of the I forgot, I can't slip in my mind. Um, uh, it'll come to me, but it's another book back home. Both of these books talk about why we are how we are regarding Jesus and our the devotion to Jesus and Christianity from the standpoint of suffering, and why we feel that connection and want to feel that connection with Jesus because of our suffering. It is a way, to me, it's a way for us to almost excuse our condition. When you get to a point mentally where you excuse your social economic conditions, or when you expect those social economic conditions to continue to be negative, then that's another problem. Many of us, we are resident in we are I'm sorry, that might be the wrong word. We are settled in the fact that we will suffer as a community. We are comfortable. We expect it, and in some cases we almost invite it. Right? Again, older generation people felt that if you were doing well in life, that the devil had you. And so, in order for you to be to be doing the things that God wanted you to do, and for you to be in line to make it to glory, you had to be suffering, because that meant that the devil was after you. I mean, if you think about the thought process of that, the damage that does to an individual over years and years and decades. But here's the secret. It's so ingrained in us, and it's so subtle until you never realize the damage that it's doing. I say this a lot. As a community, we are, in many ways, we are a sick people, and we don't know it. Because we consider it being part of our culture, but a lot of it is a sickness. And religion is, to me, in my opinion, religion is a strong part of that. Let me read some more of the comments. Bright Blue Haze said that makes sense when I said it. I appreciate it. That's the best I can. Like I said, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a counselor, but for me, and I'm always looking at it from my standpoint, because I consider myself just a regular person. As a matter of fact, my wife and I kind of went through something, and we sought a mental health expert, and it was both someone who was not of the church, and someone who was African American, and it did wonders. It did wonders. So I'm also answering your question from a little bit of experience. So yeah, absolutely. Amanda said, "If you're not suffering, you are not saved and soul life." Absolutely. That's the message that I heard every day, growing up, or especially every Sunday, every Wednesday, whenever you had to be suffering. So again, going back to our topic of today, what is that sacrifice? I mean, when you really ask yourself, Amanda, those others who have people in their family, what is it really that your family members were crying over? Those of you who know people that get emotional around Easter or the thought of Jesus being crucified, exactly why? I mean, I would ask them why. I mean, because if the answer is, well, he died for our sins, so, which is probably going to be the answer. So let me get this straight. God uh, reincarnated himself through a virgin child so that he could kill himself or be killed in order to forgive us for sins slash flaws that he himself created us with. Think about that logic again. God reincarnated himself. Let me say the right word. Reincarnated himself and was born through a virgin child so that he could die in order to forgive us for our sins or flaws that he created us with. Right. Even for those biblical scholars that will make comments on my podcast, uh, even if you said to me, well, Adam and Eve, again, we're going with these characters, and we're going to say that they did exist for today's discussion. If you said that they did not sin until the tree, still they were created by God with the ability to sin. Or even worse, God knew that they would sin, so he put the temptation right there. All of this stuff is crazy. If you really think about it, all of this stuff is asinine and crazy. So we're crying or we're emotional about a sacrifice that a God supposedly made, knowing that all this was going to happen. So if things really, and this is me being practical, right? I'm being practical right now. If I'm God and I know this is going to happen, then can I like adjust the pain threshold, right? Or if it gets too painful, can I just like stop everything? Or can I put myself in a state where I really don't feel no kind of pain? What I'm going, and it's just being practical. This might be a silly question, but if I'm a God, I can do anything, right? So again, what is the real sacrifice? And then after I die, I go back to heaven. I leave all of you. I'm done with you guys. I go back to heaven. I'm up in heaven, and now me and my Father and the Holy Ghost, whoever that is, we're back to being one again. Come on, people. I said this in jest because I want my people to think about this stuff from a critical standpoint. This stuff makes zero logical sense. And sometimes you have to make it sound silly in order for people to get the message, in order for people to start to really think. You know, that's really crazy now that I think about it. That's what I want people to start to say. And I want them to sit back and say, listen, let me start to do more research on this. Let me ask the critical questions because I need to dig myself out of this that we're in. And as a community, we need to start thinking about some other stuff that we need to really think about. Is this where we need to be spiritually or from a religious standpoint, faith? Is this really helping us? And that's a whole nother topic. But I had another comment, bright blue haze. Bright blue haze. Let me make sure I say it right. I sent messing up. I sent a friend an article about Horace to show him the parallels between his story and Jesus. I watched him skim through and reject the notion. Of course, cognitive dissonance. Of course, not only Horace, but there are at least, from my research, there are at least 16 other um, Jesus type characters from various religions. All of those religions predate Christianity. Again, if you use your brain and think critically, not those on here, but others, think about how we get stories. Think about how things flow. If it's a reason why most of these religions are in the same part of the country. I mean, in the same part of the world, in the same region of the world, because people are borrowing from other faiths to to create, to create their own belief systems and to create their own gods. This is what happened. This is humanity in action. This is what we did as humans, right? Whenever the first person decided that we needed to have a God because we needed to have, and I say this all the time, we as humans, 250, well, whenever we first started with the first time they saw evidence of some kind of spiritual practice or religious practices. It wasn't the beginning of modern Homo sapiens, which is about 250,000 years ago. It was a lot. It was way after that. But anyway, we needed answers to things that we didn't have answers to: lightning, thunder, flooding, earthquakes, sun, whatever. Um, and so we created gods as the answer to those things. That's why that's why historically you have a sun god, or you have a god of thunder, or you have a god of lightning. But as as humans figured out how these things worked or what caused these things, those gods went by the wayside, right? Many of those gods went by the wayside. And because those individuals were mostly in the same regions, they just borrowed stories and kind of changed them and made it part of their own religion and their own faith. Do your history, do some research on Noah's Ark story and find out where that story came from. I mean, there are tons of Genesis story, the creation stories. I tell me all the time, there is very little that's in the Bible that's original. All right, very little. Most of the stuff are stories that were stolen or taken from other faith and other practices, and added. And we just have to do our research. Um, Bright Blue Haze says some people are too far gone and would never entertain anything else outside of the Bible, and that's true. And that's true. And I don't get upset. I don't get. As a matter of fact, what I do, and hopefully other platforms like this, what we should be focusing on are those individuals that want to come out or that have questions or want some answers to some questions or just are inquisitive about some of the things that they've been taught. There's a segment of not only our community but the larger community that would not believe anything if it was sitting right there and it said, "Listen, all of this stuff that you've been taught about your faith and religion is fake, is not true. Here are the quantitative, empirical, objective facts to prove that what you said, that what you were taught, is completely wrong and fabricated." They still wouldn't believe you because I've presented information to people that logically should lead them to conclude, at a minimum, that there is something wrong about what we were taught as believers, right? And they still reject this. No, 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 that's man. Well, who you think wrote the Bible? Right. So yeah, you're right. Let's see. Amanda said, Bright, you should put that on a t-shirt, "Skim to reject." Absolutely right. Skim, because they had no intention on reading that. Here's listen to this. Christianity and other religions, they do a fantastic job of creating um, a wall of defense. So here's what they do. At least my experience being a Christian for many, many, many years. They tell you that if you start to read anything outside of the Bible or anything that contradicts the Bible, that is the devil. So those of us who are immersed in the faith, the last thing we want to do is be coerced by the devil. So we avoid reading anything that is in contradiction to the Bible or the things that we were taught. So that's a defense. That's one of the defense mechanisms that Christianity and other faiths have built in. So it makes you afraid to read anything or even question what you're being taught. And so many people just don't do it. So once you get comfortable in a given situation, whether it's true or false, in this case, if it's false, you're comfortable, and the truth will make you uncomfortable. So why would you want to become uncomfortable? For a lot of people, they don't want to be uncomfortable. They are comfortable, but I've had people to say this to me. They said, "Listen, I'm comfortable where I am. If I'm right, then I'll be in heaven. If I'm wrong, I don't lose anything." Right? And that's their argument. My response to them is, I like to live in truth as much as possible. I like to know as many things as I can about what I'm a part of, right? Um, and I like to live my life as honestly as possible. Not to, and from a practical standpoint, I've wasted a lot of resources in this faith. that could have been going somewhere else, improving my life or the lives of other people. So if you want a practical reason why we should search for the truth and act accordingly, is because if what we were taught or have been taught for so many years in our faith is not right, then we have wasted resources that could have gone immediately to us or our family to better our personal situation, or to others in the community to better their situation, and eventually bettering the situation of the collective. If you ask me to sum up what I'm doing, why I'm doing it in a nutshell, that would be why. Because I believe that as a community, we have wasted so many resources and so much time in following this faith and this religion, and only being concerned with whether or not we are saved, whatever that means to people, but that we are saved, till we have taken those resources and neglected the rest of the community. Those resources, whether it be financial resources, whether it be our time, whether it be our talents, could have been better served and could be better served in the community, making the community better. And O'Neill's show, we had this discussion, and someone asked me, "What does that look like?" And I told them that looks like the money that we put in church every Sunday, the millions and millions and millions of dollars, billions of dollars at this point, that have gone to churches and directly from the churches to banks who refuse to lend most of us money to start a business or whatever. We could have taken those financial resources. Let's just deal with the financial resources. We could have taken those financial resources, and we could have grocery stores in our community that sell healthier food. We could have organizations that teach financial literacy and skills that we can use to make money. We can use those resources to clean up the community. We can create our own schools where we can teach our people about who we are, so that we don't get someone that comes on and say our history started in the antebellum South. That's crazy. So yeah, so those, from a practical standpoint, we could take those resources and put those resources better to use, as opposed to giving them to a church, to give them to a bank, and we feel it, every now and then the church. Now, I'm not saying that every church does that. There are a lot of churches that do good. There are churches that do community outreach, absolutely, and I'm not saying that they're not, but there is not enough. How do I know that? Because I live in the community. And I grew up in the community, and there are multiple churches on every corner in the community, and the community still looks like and acts like crap. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying. And so we had that discussion on Sunday on Neo's show, and I appreciate her for that. Let's see any other comments. Let's see. This is Amanda. My grandmother told me, don't go to college and get too much secular education, because you'll fool yourself into thinking that you don't need Jesus. Let me put a pin in that. I have to come back to that. Let's see, Pascal's wager. Yeah, that. So let's talk about both of those. I'm glad you guys are coming. I appreciate it so much. Those of you who are not familiar with Pascal's wager, it's basically kind of what I said earlier. It's basically Christians saying, if I believe, then I'm good, because if I'm right, I'm going to heaven. And then they said, well, I'm going to continue to believe, because if I'm wrong, then I'm in really, really deep trouble. And so, meaning I'm going to hell. So the question that I ask is, if you really don't believe, but you're just doing it so that you go to heaven, wouldn't God know that? I mean, can you fool God? So if you're really not a believer, but you're doing this Pascal wager thing and saying, well, it's best to believe and be wrong. No, believe because you really believe. Don't believe because you're trying to cover your bases. If you're believing just so that you're covering your bases, do you really believe? And if you really don't believe, wouldn't God know that you really don't believe? And therefore, you're going to be in hell with me and the rest of us. I'm cool. I'm good with that, right? Because hell doesn't exist. But that's a whole nother topic, a whole nother show. So yeah, let me get back to Amanda. Amanda, your grandmother don't go to college. So the first time that I made a public proclamation, um, or that I said to someone outside of my family or immediate friends that I was no longer a believer, was at a meeting at in a speaking organization, and I got up and I asked the guest speaker a question in relationship to me uh, speaking on a particular topic. And I told her what the topic was, but I said that the topic was about religion or religious freedom or whatever. I'm in the South, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. So everyone in the room just assumed that I was talking about, pro Christianity or pro religion. After that comment and after the meeting was over, a lady approached me, a nice lady approached me, and she said, so I see that you're my brother. I said, if that means if you're referring to Christianity, no, I'm not. She said, really? And she was shocked. And she said, so I told her, I said, I used to be, but I'm no longer a believer. And we got into this conversation. She was a person, a woman with no melanin, if you know what I mean. And I say that because those are usually the people that will get really, really inquisitive into your business, right? About something like that. So I said, so we got into discussion, and she asked me, well, why are you no longer believe? I said, well, I started doing research, I started reading, and I just learned so many things, and I had so many questions, and this is just where it led me. And this is her exact words. She said, "Oh, you're one of them." I said, "What do you mean by one of them?" She said, "Well, people who tend to become more educated tend to leave the faith." And this is an objective fact. Not all people, but the more educated a person tends to be, the less religious that person tends to be. Again, this is a generalization. This is not, some of the smartest people I know, some of the most educated people I know are true, diehard, devout believers. But generally speaking, on a scale, this is what scientists and this is what the science says happens. So yeah, man. So yeah, that and it stands to reason. If you watch what evangelicals are doing, they are so opposed to higher education to the point where they even tell the women that you don't need to go to school, you need to stay in the house and have kids and take care of the house, whatever. So they're so opposed to higher education, and that's the reason why. Because you tend to educate, you tend to read stuff, you tend to ask questions, you tend to read stuff outside of the Bible. So yeah, let me get to some more of these comments, but I appreciate that, Amanda. Thank you so much. Where do we stop at? Pascal's wager, yes, yes, so much money, and I want all of my tithes and offering back. If I could get this is no exaggeration. If I could get a third of my tithes and offerings back, I'll never, ever, ever, ever have to work again in my life, ever. So yeah, I want my money back too. Let's see, Blue Haze. I wonder why our community take the sacrifice so literally. I think that that's meant to be interpreted as sacrifice to delay gratification, so that we can live better lives in the future. I think I touched on it earlier. Bright Blue. Here's my thoughts on that. I think that we take it so literally because it gives us an out regarding the position that we're collectively in socially and economically. If you can frame your condition, in this case, our condition, our if you look at any kind of stats, we're at the bottom of everything positive, and we're at the top of everything negative, generally speaking. And for the most part, we are. So we have less income, we have less education, we have more broken homes, higher crime, worse schools in our communities, all of that, all those socioeconomic things. But if you can make a group feel better about those things by telling them that your suffering and your struggling is similar to that of your Savior, then that community begins to willingly accept uh, that situation and those conditions, right? And it stops us from trying to earnestly fix those conditions, because now we believe that it is somehow our divine uh, destiny to be in the position that we're in. And now this goes into the whole. Now this, follow the line here. This also goes into the conversations that some of us may have had with individuals in our communities that believe that we are somehow um, the original Hebrews and the original Jews, and that we're somehow suffering because God is punishing us. And this is part of our punishment, to be in the condition of suffering, right? Or that we're somehow cursed because of the curse of Ham. And I did a show on that. And 90% of Black people who talk about the curse of Ham completely got it wrong. They have no clue what really happened and what that's really talking about, because they don't read the Bible. They just hear regurgitation from a pastor or a minister. And so that's my theory on it, is that um, developing this, taking this sacrifice of Jesus literally uh, takes away our accountability for our current condition collectively. It says, well, this is how we're supposed to be. This is somehow divine. This is somehow from God. So let's just sit here and accept it. That's the overall, in my opinion, that's the overall generalized sentiment of our people regarding, and that's why I think that we take it so literally, because it gives us an out. It gives us an excuse. It gives us a reason as to why we're in this condition. So yeah, that's what I believe. So I appreciate that. Let's see. Neil said, good point. I forgot which point it was. Amanda said, I'm busted. uh, like the video. Let's see. Like the video, family. Thank you, Neil. Thank you so much. LME said, heathen gang. Absolutely. We are heathens, right? Grand Day. I appreciate it. Two Brown. Is that Two Brown? We only got a couple more minutes, so let me read the rest of these comments. This is what I do different than some people on the podcast. I like to read all the comments and I like to give feedback. I love it when you guys do it. Let's see, Amanda, I think she said yes. Amanda again said C. Amanda said Rod partially started a Bible school. It's a scam. Of course, it's a scam. Rod, he's still out there. I've seen him out there, but he's been out there for a long time. He's still out there. Wow. And he is going to get people. It's going to fall for the scam, hook, line, and sinker, all day, every day. Papa Soul Searcher. Believers don't like when folks leave the faith because they did what they were told, what they were too afraid to do, and misery loves company. We can end it right there. Papa Soul Searcher, we can interact. That is why. And I may have said this on Neo's show. I said this some time ago to somebody. I said that is it. They're angry that we had the courage and the guts and the fortitude and the intelligence to A, ask questions, B, seek answers outside of the church, and C, operate on the information that we discovered, regardless of where it took us. And for many of us, it took us away from the faith. And then we're happy, we're proud, we don't have second doubts. And they're jealous of that, because I don't care who they are or how devout they are. You cannot tell me that every Christian don't have at least some doubts about some of the stuff that they read or that they were taught. You have to. Just the Genesis story, you got to have some doubt. Adam and Eve story, you gotta have some doubt. Noah's story, the great flood, Jonah in the belly of the whale. Come on, you gotta have some doubts about this stuff. Somebody dying on the cross and the sun stopping and people getting up from the dead out of graves. You gotta have some doubts about this stuff, right? And even in our personal life, when we've prayed and asked for things to happen and those things didn't happen, that should create some doubt. So absolutely. We'll get to these last few comments. From a slavery time perspective, we're the runaways. Yeah, we are. We are. We might not collectively, we might not still be in physical chains, but we are definitely in mental chains. And I want us to all understand this. Um, the mental chains that we're in related to religion is a tool of white supremacy. It all goes hand in hand. As long as we are submissive and docile and waiting for our reward on the other side, we will continue to be used and abused and mistreated and continue to be marginalized as a community. The minute that we decide that we'll take account of our own lives and take everything in our own hands, um, and leave this God Jesus figure out of it and stop waiting for Him to fix it, you will see a tremendous change in our community. I'm a firm believer of that. I am a firm believer of that. So yeah. So Amanda said, let me get, where did I stop at? Neo, I still get those, Neo, I still get those stupid prophet, what is it? What is that? Manessa? Robust calls. I'm about to sue. Do it. Do it, Neo. Amanda said, that's why they call millennials rebellious, because we ask questions that they don't have answers to. It bruises their ego. Um, the reason why I have faith in my community, whatever little faith I have left, because you guys, my community is testing my faith in us. But it is the millennials and the generations after the millennials, because they're looking around. They looked around and they said, "I see what my mom, I see what my grandma, my dad, my granddad did, and it did work. So we have to do something different." The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to question this thing that we call religion and Christianity. And if it doesn't work, if it doesn't pass the smell test, we're out of here. And that's what's happening with a lot of them. And so they're watching what their non-black peers are doing. Yeah, they go to church for an hour on Sunday, and that is it. They don't see the world through the prism of religion 24/7 like we do as a community. And our millennial kids and young people and those younger are seeing this and understanding this, and they're seeing it for the scam that it is. They're seeing it for the scam that it is, and I am so appreciative, and I am supportive of that. Um, let's see, Papa Soul Search. The minute you ask a question out loud, you would get turned. You would get turned on. Um, the minute you ask a question out loud, you will get turned on. Oh, absolutely. But that's why we got this platform. That's why we have platforms like this, so that we can ask these questions. We come together as a community, and the stronger we get, the more outspoken we get, the less that's going to happen. Also, like I just said about the millennials and those people who are younger, I'm telling you right now. Hey, Sharon, what's going on? Uh, yeah, please watch the replay, and I'm going to wrap this up real soon. But being in school, I have class with a lot of younger people, and literally, a lot of these kids have no experience with the church and whatsoever. I had a professor that was talking about altar call the other day, and some of these young people, the look on their face was like, "What the hell is that?" And once he explained it, they was like, "What the hell is that? And why would you do that?" Right? So it's amazing. So absolutely, we are as a community, the younger people, we are headed, in my opinion, we're headed in the right direction. Absolutely. Hey Sharon, yeah, please watch the replay. Generation X, yeah, is that who's your Papa Soul? Are you Generation X? We Generation X, right? It's X, Millennial, and Z, or is it no? We are Generation X. Some of us in Generation X, Papa Soul Search, we are waking up. Some of us, you can forget the boomers. They talk. There's no hope for the boomers. There's some hope for us. And I'm glad the millennials are kind of watching some of the stuff we do, but they're doing their own thing. So it is great. And Z and whatever is after Z, they're going to continue going. So LMA, I heard another YouTube say it's impractical for WS to put chains around 44 million black people ankle. You need something else. That is so what they can do is that they can put religious chains around our minds, and that has been a part of it. And because they had to release the physical chains, the mental chains are don't you don't think that the people who want to oppress us don't understand the power of the church and how to use the church to keep us in the condition that they want to keep us in. That don't think that they don't understand that the power of that. They understand it real well. If you don't believe me, wait until election time. They understand it extremely well how to use the church to their advantage. They understand that so well. Let's see. These gonna be the last two, and then we got to get out of here. My ex turned on me. There are hey, well, maybe I don't know the situation, but you might be better off. Um, I was fortunate. My wife and I, we kind of came to the same conclusion. I was at the same time. And so it was cool. It was good for us. But I've had friends that I've been friends with for 40 years that turned on me. Absolutely. I had, I mean, I had a mother who basically said some really, really hateful, awful things about me to my sister because she didn't say it to me because she kind of held me, she kind of held me on a pedestal until I revealed to her that I was no longer a believer like she was. But she said some really, really hateful things to my sister about me. My sister told me, and it was fine. I couldn't be happier in my life uh, about every aspect of my life, but especially about that decision. There is zero turning back. I got friends who say, "Oh, you'll be back. You're coming back. You're going to have a Saul in the Damascus moment, and Paul in Damascus moment, or whatever. All of that. No, not the more I learn, the further away I run. The more I have not encountered anything, not 1/10 of 1% of anything that makes me say, maybe I was wrong. Absolutely nothing. So I'm good with that. Stevens, hey from Tennessee, appreciate it, man. Thank you for joining. And then Bright Blue Hay said right. So yeah, so this pretty much gonna end it. But let me thank you guys so much. And before I get out of here again, we have plenty of the books. If you want to get a signed copy of the book From Saved to Sane, My Journey Away from Christianity and Why Christianity Has Been Detrimental to the African American Community. Willie Cartwright. Oh, that's me, Willie Cartwright. Where am I? Yeah, right here. Willie Cartwright. You can cash out me $19.99. Is really easy to remember the cash out. It is Willie Cartwright 1906. That's it. $ Willie Cartwright, WILLIE Cartwright, CARTWRIGHT 1906 1999, and your address. We can get you a signed copy. If you want to go to Amazon and get it, I appreciate those of you who have, because it has. People have been getting the book off Amazon, so I'm totally appreciative of that. Appreciative of all of you guys. You can get it off of Amazon. Just look for Willie Cartwright or From Saved to Sane, and it'll be there. Let's see, Papa. I had to pause for school, but we'll finish it good. Okay, that's Sharon. Somebody before Papa said, and Paul woke up again in Hebrews 6. There you go. Yeah. So guys, thank you so much. This has been awesome. I appreciate this so much. I love doing this. I love the family. So this is great. Taisha, I hope you're still out there. I hope you didn't fall asleep on me, Taisha. But we appreciate that. NeoX, thank you for your support. Guys, NeoX and I, can I drop? Yeah, Neo, please drop your channel. Neo is going to drop her channel in the comments. Please follow and support this sister. Subscribe to this sister channel. Subscribe to Taisha's channel. They're doing some great things. Neo X and I, we're going to, I think, discuss my book and some other things. Is it next week? Neo, I think it's on a Sunday, the 20, whatever that Sunday is, the 25th or whatever it is. But we're going to do that. And so you can catch us on that. That's going to be awesome. Papa Soul Search said, I follow Neo too. Neo is on fire. And so again, shout out to Neo and a shout out to Taisha, my friends to the end. I will see you guys in a couple of weeks. Remember, we've moved this to every other Thursday at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Sharon, that's 3 o'clock for you out there in Arizona. So make sure you get the time right, because I want to have you on here. Amanda says she subscribed to all channels. Thank you so much. I am out of here. Enjoy the day tomorrow. Enjoy your weekend. Bye.